Okay, great. Let's dive in. First of all, thank you all for joining our webinar today. We aim to do these around once a week or once every 2 weeks, although we'll be taking a little break before the holidays. So I appreciate you joining this one. Just noticed actually the date on the slide is wrong, but this is a new presentation we've prepared to walk you through some of the updates with OneSignal in 2019, and also some of the things we're thinking about for 2020. And I'll walk through the presentation over about 15 or 20 minutes. And then in the end, we'll open it up to Q&A and I can answer any questions that people have. So kicking things off, real quick on the agenda. So my name is George Steglin. I'm the co-founder and CEO here at OneSignal. I'll be walking you through a little bit of the history of OneSignal and doing a quick look back at 2019, and in particular, focusing on a lot of the features that we've introduced over the past year that we hope you'll get to use and enjoy over the coming months to improve how you use notifications. And then finally, we'll touch on some best practices for notifications in 2020, as well as some of the changes that we anticipate happening with notification technology, and also some of the changes that we'll be making to our platform to help you get better results. And then finally, as I mentioned, we'll have time for a Q&A in the end as well. So first of all, a quick overview of what OneSignal is. So OneSignal is a notification platform. You may already be using us to deliver push notifications to your users. We're also expanding into other solutions, including in-app messaging, email, and other channels. The history of the company, we were actually a mobile game development studio, and we were looking for a product that would help us re-engage our users with notifications. And through our search, we really struggled to find anything that met our needs and that would help us deliver notifications that were engaging, relevant, targeted, personalized. And so we set out to build that solution ourselves, and we created OneSignal in early 2015 is when we released it, and we very quickly become the market leader. We're based in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we're trusted by now over 800,000 developers and marketers on our platform. So looking back at 2019, it's been a fantastic year for our company, and also the product has greatly evolved as well. We've added nearly 300,000 new developers to the platform, including hopefully many of you. We've doubled the size of our team, so that has really helped us better serve a lot of our customers. Every department is about twice the size that it was before, and we've have a couple of new teams like customer success. And that's really helping us provide a better service to all of those customers, and also to speed up how quickly we're able to build features for everyone. We were happy to announce that we raised a $25 million round of venture capital to help further accelerate the growth of our business. And we've launched over 25 major new features, many of which I'm going to walk through in just a minute. Yeah, you can sort of see the evolution of the company. We blog about the new features we've released, and if any of you have been with us for a while, you'll also see that we released a new website that we're really proud of. Our past website was pretty basic, just kind of brought you into the product. And today we've built it out significantly, so you can dive into all the different capabilities of OneSignal, dive into more case studies to see how different people use the product, and better understand all the different features we provide, and that you can think about. Probably the biggest new feature we released in 2019 was support for in-app messaging. This is available to all of our users that use OneSignal for their mobile application. And it's a way that you can show an interstitial message to your users. And that might be something to tell them about a coupon, or thank them for installing your application, or ask them to review your app. Really, the possibilities are limitless. The great thing about in-app messaging is it works for every user that has installed your application. Even if that user maybe is on Apple's iOS platform and has not allowed notification permission, they're still able to receive in-app messages when they launch their app. The other nice thing about it is you can really precisely target which users see the notification, the in-app notification, in-app message rather. So you can make sure that the message is being shown really precisely to the users you want. So if there's a regional holiday or users that are more or less engaged, you can use the existing segmentation features that you might be using for notifications and apply those in-app messaging. So if you're not already using this, please check it out. If you're using OneSignal for web push, we are thinking about how to introduce in-app messaging for web push as well. That's probably a little bit further out in 2020, but we'll keep you updated as we start looking at rolling out support for in-app on web. If you've been using the product regularly, you've probably seen a lot of improvements to our dashboard over the last few months in particular. We've done a lot to increase the ease of use and just the visual polish based on feedback from our customers. And it's really, really come a long way. There's even more improvements that we're looking at making. So we hope that we're continuing to make OneSignal easier to use, easier to navigate, especially for some of the newer customers that are coming on board. One feature that we were really happy to introduce and is based a lot on the customer feedback we were getting is the ability to simplify the notification sending flow. So in the past, oftentimes you had to dive in pretty deeply into the settings of a notification. And if you wanted to put on an image for iOS, Android, and web, you might have to upload that 3 times or something like that. So we've greatly simplified that. Now, really in sort of just the first page, you can configure all of the common options around notification, content, title, image. And then if you do want to get more into the more advanced settings, those are available, but you don't have to do that to use the more frequently used features. One very powerful feature is now the ability to track influenced opens. So we know that users often receive a notification that is interesting to them, and that may cause them to engage with the application, but they don't always do that by clicking on the notification itself. So now OneSignal goes beyond just measuring the number of clicks a notification gets, but also tracks how many people open an application soon after receiving a notification, and that's counted as an influenced open. You can actually configure the time period of influenced opens, so whether you want to attribute those on a 15-minute time window, 1 hour, or 24 hours is up to you. And this helps you get a great sense of the true impact that your notifications are having at increasing your user engagement. And that's part of a greater overhaul we've done around the analytics of OneSignal. In the past, we made it very easy to see how many notifications were sent, how many were clicked, and now, of course, you have influenced opens, but you can also attribute other events, such as purchases, user engagement, or really any sort of action that you care about. You can now pass to us as an outcome and visualize both how individual notifications are affecting those outcomes, as well as how all of the notifications that you send through OneSignal are affecting the outcomes that you care about. So really encourage you to check this out. This is something that we think every single application can benefit from. It's also something that is becoming available for our web push users as well, so you should use it there too. Another area that we've improved is some of the segmentation capabilities, especially around time triggers. So now it's actually possible to create a segment based on a certain amount of time having elapsed since a tag was added. So we detail this more in our documentation, but basically a really common use case for this is if you want to send a notification to users that have abandoned their shopping cart, and you might want to do that after 1 hour, 8 hours, or 24 hours, and that's all customizable. And this segment, when combined with automated messages, can help you automate cart abandonment flows or certain types of time-sensitive re-engagement notifications. User permissions were a feature that we were happy to introduce as well. It has been part of getting a lot more sophisticated customers onto the platform, where you may want to configure the different sorts of access that users have, whether those are people that are more in analyst positions and you want them just to see the statistics of your notifications, or whether you want to have admins that have much broader permissions and can send notifications. That's all configurable now on both the organization level as well as on an individual app level. Improved data importing and exporting. So also a common request. And in particular, this is very useful if you have a lot of users where you want to add a set of tags, remove a set of tags, or group users into audiences based on data that you have in your CRM or your database. You can now actually do that by simply putting that data into a CSV file, and that can be exported from Excel or from your database, and then import it into OneSignal, and will automatically apply and modify the data based on the imported data. We've also done several features around exporting data, and I'll walk through a little bit of that as well. And then, yeah, just earlier this week, we announced integration with Bubble.io. So Bubble.io is a really popular platform for building websites for folks that may not know how to code or just want to build something without having to use a lot of code. It's a great drag and drop application builder, and we were happy to work with them to make it very simple to integrate OneSignal into Bubble to send different types of notifications. So real quick, some of the other features we introduced, support for external IDs. So this lets you map your users in OneSignal with your own user database or CRM system and be able to track the users across the different systems as well as more easily synchronize data between them. Our segment API, where now you can create segments or modify them programmatically. A receive notification API. So now you can actually export a list of users that have received notifications that you've sent. And finally, Mac Catalyst support. So if you're an iOS developer, Apple now supports exporting your iOS apps as native macOS applications, and OneSignal supports notifications for those as well. One change that we blogged about earlier this year and affected some of our iOS developers, and really all iOS developers in the world, was when Apple released iOS 13 and Xcode 11. They actually made some changes to the technical implementation of notifications on the device. They didn't necessarily do a great job of documenting all of this, but fortunately we heard from some customers about these changes, and also we followed some of the announcements very closely to best understand how these might impact our customers or the greater ecosystem of iOS developers. So one of the bigger changes that was made was they actually changed the code that's necessary to get the user's push token. And a lot of SDKs, including the OneSignal SDK, were using the old method, and users that are releasing new applications using Xcode 11 should make sure that they're using now the new OneSignal SDK, which has been updated to support this. If you haven't updated your app in a long time, it's going to continue working. You just need to make sure to use the next OneSignal SDK, the newest OneSignal SDK, when you next update your iOS app. There were also some backend changes that were made that impacted a lot of developers that may not have been aware of this. So for instance, Apple actually changed some of the parameters that are required when sending notifications through their push notification service. These were changes that OneSignal became aware of pretty early, and we made all the necessary fixes on our end so that there was no customer impact. You may have also seen any applications that were using some of the voice over IP capabilities of iOS did have to adapt slightly what they can use voice over IP support for. And a small number of customers on our platform, and especially some of the bigger apps, were using these features in some interesting ways. And we made sure to sort of blog about that and best explain the changes, as well as explain how you need to slightly use OneSignal differently to make sure that everything continues working. So if you want more details on this, please take a look at our blog. And I also just encourage you to follow our blog to stay updated on all the changes we're making to our platform, as well as our regular updates about some of the changes happening across iOS, Android, Web Push, or the other channels that we support. That brings me to actually one of the bigger changes that's happening in 2020. So one of the things that's happening is Firefox 72, which is going to be released in January 2020, will actually make it so that users need to click a button somewhere on the page before a website can show them the web push notification permission prompt. Fortunately, OneSignal has several different prompting mechanisms, including a bell, a button, or a slide down, all of which you can simply turn on if you don't already have that enabled, which acts as the necessary user interaction piece in order to show the browser's native permission prompt. Any website that's currently only using native permission prompt, so you may have seen this if you go to a website and the first thing that happens is you see the browser notification permission prompt, that will actually no longer be possible in Firefox until the user interacts with something on the page. A similar change is happening in Google Chrome, and we expect a release of Google Chrome that's going to make that change to happen in February of 2020. So the big thing that's happening there is that any website that's now using the native permission prompt without a two-step process, Google will actually begin to track the frequency that users click the no button on that prompt. And if it's very, very high, a different type of prompt will be shown to users instead that's more subtle and less disruptive. That can be a little bit confusing for users, and the new prompt isn't very visible. So we recommend that websites always use a two-step prompting mechanism. That way, users will choose whether they want to allow or deny notifications on the two-step prompt prior to seeing the native prompt. And when users do see the native prompt, they'll be much more likely to click yes, and that way there will be no impacts to the user experience of your website since the frequency of users clicking no will be very low. So we'll be going into more depth about this in our next webinar on January 15th. These changes are still evolving pretty quickly over time, and we're tracking closely some of the changes that Chrome is experimenting with. So we'll have more insight into what's expected, and we'll also be publishing blog posts and probably sharing some news on our Twitter feed. For what we know so far, we've shared a lot more detail on our blog, including several videos that walk through the different prompting flows that we expect to be introduced in Chrome 80 in February of 2020, as well as more details on some of our recommendations to make sure your website is not negatively affected by these changes. Overall, we actually see these as really, really positive. I think web push notifications have generally gotten a bad perception from a lot of users because they can be kind of annoying when you visit a website and you're prompted right away about whether you want to allow notifications or not before you've really gotten a chance to understand whether the website is interesting or not. So these changes are designed to improve the user experience, and websites that do have a user experience and that are asking users to grant notification permission for the right reasons we'll see probably a higher opt-in rate and certainly a higher user engagement rate as spammier websites get sort of deprioritized. That brings us to sort of the general best practices for notifications, and especially going into 2020, which is that when you ask users for notification permission, it's best to pre-prompt them. So basically, tell them why you want them to grant permission before you ask for it. And this applies in particular to web push and to iOS. On Android native applications, this doesn't apply because notifications are actually granted when the user installs the application. But of course, on web push and iOS, since it is possible to tell the user why they should grant permission before you ask for it, the more specific you can be and the more convincing you can be, the higher your opt-in rate will be. And that's a much better practice than simply showing them the prompt without context. Next, think about when to send the notifications. If you have users around the world, it's best to send the notifications at a time when they are going to be actively using their phone or likely to see the notification and respond to it. So one of the features that we have in the OneSignal platform is the ability to send notifications based on user time zone. And that's a really great way to make sure all your notifications are arriving at the best possible time of day for each user around the world. We also have another feature called intelligent delivery, which helps you actually optimize when notifications are delivered based on each user's likelihood. And we use an algorithm that looks at users' past activity with your application to optimize that. So that's also a great way to make sure your notifications are arriving in the ideal time. And finally, as much as you can, seek to personalize your notifications. So use our tags feature, which lets you add data to your users about their past interactions with your app or website, their preferences, their demographics. Those tags can then be used to make sure the notifications are personalized to your users or sent to the right segments. Anything you can do to help differentiate your message and make it more relevant to the users that are receiving it is really going to help increase your engagement and also increase the user experience of your application. Google is actually doing a nice job of evangelizing some of these principles. And one of the things that they talked about, this is a video from the Chrome Dev Summit that you can find on YouTube, is some of the principles of a good permission request. And similar to what we described, the first is only asking for access that you really need. And so in the context of notifications, you can think about that as in making sure you ask for notification permission when users have context about why they should grant it, and a sense that they will actually benefit from getting notifications from your application. Being clear and specific about what you need and why in advance of prompting, So this is why we support these two-step prompting flows, especially for web push. It really makes it easier to provide the necessary context. Prompting at a contextually relevant moment in the user's journey is certainly recommended. Making sure your website still works fine if users don't grant notification permission. So in-app messaging on iOS is a great example of a way you can still send users a message that they can see, even if they haven't granted push notification permission. And then finally, if users block or ignore permission, it's good to give them the opportunity to allow it again, especially if there are features of your application that rely on notifications. You do want to make it easy for users to turn those on or to customize their preferences. And that brings us over to Q&A. So if you have a question, please type it in the chat and I'll be happy to respond to it. So Tim asked, if in the SDK, a user has not subscribed yet, is there a way to tell if that's the case? So yes, across all of our SDKs, we provide methods to detect the user's permission state, and that might be that they've subscribed. It could be that they have not yet been prompted or that they dismissed the prompt, or it could be that they actively denied the prompt. So all of our SDKs support that, and you can look at our documentation for the API documentation on how to detect a user's permission setting. So Purna asked, how to track the user activity on every click. So one of the best ways to do that is to implement code in your website or application to detect when the user has clicked the notification and then send that to your analytics system. So OneSignal has built-in analytics. For instance, we have our outcomes feature where you can send us events such as the user purchasing an item or signing up for an account or other things. And you should certainly use our API, which is part of our SDKs, to send us outcomes. But then also, you can send those events to your analytics system, whether that's something like Google Analytics or any other analytics service that you might use. And if you're also tracking other events there, then that's a great way to see all of the notification-related activity alongside the other analytics events that you might already be tracking. Forna also asked, how to customize the influence open time set for notifications. So you can configure that in the settings of OneSignal for your application. Influence opens right now are a paid feature only, so you do need to be on either a starter plan or pro plan with OneSignal. But it's a great feature, and we definitely recommend it. So if you are on a paid account or if you're thinking about it, influenced opens will be available in the settings for your app. A question that was raised is, how are outcomes useful to a business? So outcomes are a great way to see whether your notifications are having the desired impact that you are seeking from them. So for example, if you tend to send a daily or a weekly notification with the goal of increasing signups in your application or increasing engagement, you can send those outcomes to us. So if you send notification inviting users to sign up, and they do, you would send that to OneSignal as an outcome. And then using our outcome analytics, you can track how much each notification is influencing the number of signups that you're getting, as well as track the overall number of signups you're getting as a result of your notifications. So it's a great way to sort of see what's working, what's not, and then fine tune either the frequency or the content of your notifications to make sure they're as effective as possible. One question is how to enable user location detection by default in our SDKs. So in both our iOS and Android SDK, there's a method you can call, which then starts to automatically track user location points and providing those to OneSignal. You can then use that to target notifications based on users that might be in a certain radius. So for example, users that live in San Francisco can then receive notifications from you segmented by location. Of course, in order to do this, users do have to grant location permission to your application. On Android, this is often done when they install their application, or you can show them a prompt to do it. On iOS, it's done while they're using the application. And so if you're already getting notification permission from your users and you turn this on in OneSignal, it'll just work. If you're not yet doing it, you will have to turn on this feature in OneSignal and read our documentation to make sure you're getting permission from the users to track location as well. Another question was, can we create any number of events, or are there any limitations on it? So actually, I don't quite know the answer to that. It's probably in our documentation. But offhand, I do know that there is no small limit to the number of outcomes or other events you can track. So if you're looking to track, a reasonable number, 10 to 20, that should be no problem. It is possible there is a higher limit, like 100 plus or something like that. But generally, typically you'll be tracking no more than 20, and that's perfectly fine. If you are running into any sort of limitations with the number of events that you want to track, or you have deeper questions on that, please reach out to our support team, and we can provide you more insight or links to relevant documentation. And then, can we track the user activity with the number of events? So there's a couple ways that you can track, if I understand this question correctly, there's a couple ways you can actually increment the number of events that are tracked. So if you are looking to track how many times did the user take this action, you can actually do that by using our tags feature, and you can tag users each time that they complete the necessary action. So for example, if the event you want to track is the user watching a video in your application, you might have an event called video watch count, and you would assign that as a user tag. And then each time the user watched another video, you could take the value of that tag. So we have a method that will give you the tag value. And then you can also assign it. So if you set it to 1 initially, you can then read it, see that it's 1, and then increment it, and it'll be 2. So this is a great way if you have different events in your application that you might want to use to personalize the notifications you're sending based on past activity. You might want to send something to people that have watched 0 videos, and that will be data that's available to you that way. Or you might want to send notification to people that have watched a lot of videos, and that will be available to you as well then. So Ben asked, how do we expect the 2-step prompting will affect sign-up rate for web pushes? So actually, I don't think it's going to affect sign-up rate very much. If you're already using the 2-step prompting mechanism, then almost certainly there will be no change, or you might actually see a slight uptick in the number of users granting notification permission because that is a better user experience. If you are using currently the native prompt and you are switching to the 2-step prompt, it depends a little bit on the type of website that you have. If most of the subscribers you've been getting are people that accidentally click yes, or that are somehow tricked into clicking yes, then of course the opt-in rate will go down. But generally, people that accidentally click yes, or that you trick into it, are not valuable users to your business anyway. And so to the degree that you can actually make sure that people that are granting permission are doing it knowing about the context of what they'll receive, and you're doing a good job of explaining that to them using either our slide down window, the button, or the bell, and providing necessary context, I think you'll actually see a nice improvement in both the subscription rate, and certainly you'll see an improvement in the general user experience and satisfaction of your users with your website. Okay, I think we're at about time now. If you have additional questions, please reach out to us at support@onesignal.com or use the chat widget on our website. Our team is always happy to answer questions. Our business hours are in San Francisco time, typically around 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. So those are when we'll most likely have a response for you. But even with the holidays, we're making sure to stay on top of the different support questions we're getting and product questions we're getting. So don't hesitate to reach out. And real quick, one question that was asked here is a request for us to make some videos on different settings and features of OneSignal. So we've done our best to actually provide some helpful videos, GIFs, and guides in our documentation. You can also look on YouTube for past webinars or past walkthroughs we've done of our product. So I encourage you to check those out if you're looking for a little bit of an easier to follow guide. And of course, if you do run into problems, we're always happy to help on support. And when we do see a question coming up frequently, we use that as an opportunity to improve our documentation or to introduce a video to help people out. I want to thank you again all for joining. It was a pleasure. Yeah, I hope you all get to use the OneSignal platform, and send us any feedback as you have it. Thanks again.